Ahoy, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Nice to see. Oh, crikey, I'm not that late, am I? Couple of minutes. Plenty of you in already, so you're not all getting the Oxbridge pleasantries. I've got a guest on today, by the way. I told you I was trying to make it happen yesterday, but being as the Bootneck's something of a Luddite, it didn't work. However, he's got back to me and he's assured me he's going to come on. So even though he's just vanished from my screen, I'm sure he's going to turn up eventually. We have got news to talk about as well. Obviously, this one was on my stream today, which I thought was quite interesting. Damar Hamlin, why do some young athletes suffer cardiac arrest? Why? Why? Does anybody know? I have no idea. Fuck knows. Don't forget the audio button. No, the audio button. I don't know what you mean, Trevor. Hopefully I've got sound, right? I've got sound. So don't confuse me with that. Damar Hamlin, why do some young athletes have a cardiac arrest? Well, I think we know why, don't we? I think we know why. However, instead of talking about this, we're going to talk about something a little light, a little bit more light entertainment today, because I have noticed, I feel like the best way to get on in the YouTube sphere is to diversify, right? And I don't mean diversify in the modern way, right? Which would be to replace me with a short black lesbian who talks about scissoring and smack. No, I mean diversify your content, because if you just do what I do and rant about politics all day, it seems like you constantly get slapped by YouTube. So I'm going to attempt, after the smash hit of my review of Captain America and the Winter Soldier and the Falcon, sorry, I'm going to try and do a little bit of alternative content every now and then. I mean, you know, the main thrust is still going to be talking about everybody's favorite taxpayer-funded communist behemoth. But I am going to do a bit more of that. And someone that's motivated me to do it is a YouTuber called Despot of Antrim, who is loads of base people seem to be coming out of our Irish and Northern Irish neighbours across the pond. Loads of base people over there. And this bloke made some fucking marvellous content over the last couple of months. So I invited him on for a chat. And we're just going to do what I do when I talk with Al or anybody else who I've had on, and shoot the shit in general and make it up as we go along, right? Because I don't like the scripted. So I'll just press this button and hopefully it'll pop up. There we go. Hang on. How's that? There we go. Despot of Antrim, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much for having me on, Bootneck.
Absolute pleasure. Right then, quick introduction, and you can answer this for me as well because I'm interested. How long ago exactly did you start making YouTube content?
I think I started in May. So what's that, 8 months, maybe?
Oh, you're doing well then. You're doing well then.
Yeah, I looked up the statistics are brutal to start off. Just in case anyone listening is interested in starting a video, be prepared to have some very, very depressing early going of it. Because I'd like to know what it was like for you, because for me, I didn't get a subscriber until I did 22 videos. And when I finally got a subscriber, I was so pleased. I made a wee first subscriber celebration video. But I read a wee book about starting a YouTube channel, and that helped because it told me that the YouTube algorithm doesn't even kick in until about 30 videos in. And I think the purpose of that is to filter out people that aren't willing to post regularly.
Yeah. All right. No, you are doing well. I'm sure. I mean, since I've hit 40 and I've got a bit of a drink problem, I don't think my long-term memory is the best. So I'm not certain. But I think I had 500 subscribers and less for about a year. It was tiny growth. And that's the way it is now. I think the glory days must have been about 10, 15 years ago, because I just left the Corps and I started watching a lot of YouTube, you know, while I was retraining and looking for work and stuff. And that was when I really got into it. You know, I think, so it was probably 10, 15 years ago. Like, I sort of sat there, realized very quickly, you know, because in my military career, I was never sat on my ass ever. You were either deployed where you don't have a telly or the internet, or you were, you know, out enjoying yourself. And I quickly realized that YouTube's 10 times better than telly. Like, it's way better than telly. I literally never watch the TV anymore.
That's true. Well, but YouTube are trying their best to make it worse.
They are. They're doing the level best to fuck it all up, aren't they? But I think that was the glory era, and I think now 90% of it's shite. I think so many people are trying to do it that I'll tell you what it's like, because I did stand-up comedy in LA. I mean, it's such a twat thing to do, but I'm naturally good at that type of thing. So I thought, I'm in LA, I've got to have a bash. And I'll tell you what, 19 out of 20 people that got on the fucking stage were awful. You just sit there going, fuck me. It's like nowadays when you see fat birds wanting to be models, or rats blokes wanting to be on FHM's cover. It's like, listen, you're howling. Just get a job in a bank. Do you know what I mean? Everybody wants to be fucking famous or what have you. And because of that, I think now you've got this massive exodus, not an exodus. What's the opposite of an exodus? A huge influx of people that don't have the talent or aren't interesting enough to be doing it. I think 99 out of 100 people on YouTube are shit. And it makes it hard for new guys. I think we missed the boat.
I know what you're saying, especially in my sphere. You really have to find a niche. Like, for example, one of the reasons I was doing it was because I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, and these were YouTubers I liked, but they were all making mistakes. Like, because it's a video essay a lot of the time. If you're talking about a movie or a TV show, you're doing it in a video essay format. Yeah. And I've been teaching essay writing, like university essay writing, for a few years now. And so I learned a lot about it. And I was watching videos thinking, wow, they're making, that's wrong, that's a mistake. So I thought, yeah, I could probably do that better. But my early videos were shite. Like, I mean, they were bollocks. I can't even watch them. I sat there thinking, Jesus, that's mind-numbing shite. Like,
well, I mean, everything's like that, isn't it? You get better at everything as you go on.
You do, and most people don't give themselves a chance to get better. They give up too easily. So you have to just be shite, and it's the same with everything. Doesn't matter what you do in life. You're going to be shite at it for a while before you get good.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. Ultimately, it sounds like a cliche, but you have to really love what you're doing. I did it because I like talking shit. Like, I'm unusually verbose. When I go out, I talk to strangers. My brother and my missus cringe, you know what I mean? Because I'm the type of bloke who's sat at a bar, and as soon as someone says something interesting, I'm like, fucking hell, and I'll just join in. Sort of almost rude the way I like talking. But basically, I sort of resolved that when I was going to start doing it, I wasn't going to try and make money. I wasn't going to do advertising. I wasn't looking at it as a career. I was just like, I'm just going to do this because I like doing it.
Exactly.
And you have to tell yourself that, so that for that first year when I had like less than 500 subs, just keep doing it anyway. I think as long as you keep doing what you enjoy doing, you'll keep at it. Whereas 99% of people will do it because they're thinking, oh yeah, I'll be able to get rich and I won't have to work in an office. And then they do it, and 6 months later they haven't got any subs, so they just stop. I think as long as you just crack on and just stubbornly keep doing it, you'll get somewhere. You definitely will, because you've actually got a talent for it.
Yeah, but like you said, the main thing is to enjoy it. Like, honestly, you said yourself, if you're not enjoying it, you've basically just created another job for yourself, more hassle, less free time. So if you're not enjoying it, there's absolutely no point whatsoever. It's kind of the reason, even though I'm quite interested in politics, as you might have guessed from watching the videos, it's the reason I didn't do a political channel, because politics is so blackpilling to me today. Like, I read, oh, Jesus Christ, I try not to, but sometimes I can't help it. I read The Guardian. It's like I have this masochistic streak. I just have to get the occasional Guardian story in, but my God, I despise them. I can't tell you how much I despise The Guardian.
I reckon, right? I think you learn a lot about someone by watching their content. And I reckon from watching the last few months of your gear, even though predominantly you're doing reviews of entertainment, I reckon you and I'd agree on like 9 out of 10 issues. Like, you get a good feel for someone, don't you, by what the things they like. And I agree with you in that respect. I think I should have done that. Like, if I was more sensible 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever I started doing it, I should have just done that. I should have done movie reviews, video games, stuff that I'm into. Warhammer 40k, I love Warhammer. If I'd have done that, I reckon I'd have 10 times, 50 times the outreach that I've got. So you've got the right idea. I'm convinced that you'll be bigger than me in 6 months' time. You just have to keep at it because you've definitely got the right idea. Politics is a fucking big no-no on YouTube. They hate you. They hate you when you're over the politics. Yeah.
Like if I tried a politics channel, my channel will get nuked in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it does.
I've seen, because I've followed guys who had really good channels, and these were, do you know what it is? It's usually like British politics. Several of them were talking about British politics, focusing very specifically on the mass immigration issue, and YouTube just deleted their channels, like the entire channel, like months, in some case over a year of work, hundreds of thousands of subs, and just nuked. And I just thought that would be me. If I was talking about politics, I'd put in all this work and I get nuked, and then I get depressed. Nah, just talk about movies and TV.
You do have to
movies
be,
and TV shows.
You do have to be black-pilled like that, I think, and you also have to be a bit of a bit of a masochist like me, because, like I said, I live to just have a crack. Like, you know, if I'm not having a crack, I'm making jokes. I'm not enjoying my life. I don't care how bad things are. Gallows humour is very common in the military, but I had it before I joined up. I mean, I was born and raised in Middlesbrough, for fuck's sake. If you're not laughing when you see fucking dead babies outside Aldi, you'd be depressed all the time. So that's the sort of mentality I have. And I can understand that because it's happened to me. When you spend a lot of time making a video, you put loads of effort in and they just instantly nuke it and then ban you for 2 weeks. It does. It totally made me understand why that woman, do you remember when that weird, she was weird. I've seen some of her content. It must have been maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, some weird like Persian woman living in the US but of Persian descent. And she went completely mental and went into Google like HQ with a fucking handgun. And by the way, proved why there's a wage gap, because she went in to do a mass killing and she wounded like one person and then got slotted.
It also proved that women shouldn't be frontline soldiers. Like, Jesus Christ, you go into Google, like you're talking about the biggest nerds on planet Earth, right? Couldn't run the length of themselves, and your score is 1 killed and 1 wounded. That's pretty bad, like.
Mate, if I went off it and drove up to Google, I guarantee I'd kill at least 500 of the cunts. They'd need to get Ed 209 after me, and then I'd be straight down the stairs because I know what I'm doing. It's unbelievable that, but it does really frustrate you. So maybe that's what you were saying about how brutal it is. Maybe it's a sort of mixture of all of those things. You've got to be stubborn. You've got to be sort of dogmatic. You've got to enjoy what you do. You've got to not be doing it for money or fame or accolades. And you've got to be a bit of a pervert and almost like getting frustrated, because it is really, really frustrating. It must have happened to me like 10 times where I've worked hard on something and they just nuke it. And then I finally got a viral video with like 300,000 views and shitloads of traffic. And they nuked that as well. It lasted about 5 days and they went, nah, we're not having this. We're not having you be popular, you hairy northern cud, fuck you. And they just wiped it out. So you have to be a certain type of person. But anyway, we'll have to talk about movies. I'll just say that to you. You really should have a much bigger channel, and I'm convinced if you just keep at it, you'll end up way bigger than me, because I love watching your stuff. One video we'll talk about, because obviously it's a little bit political, and that's what I predominantly focus on, was the one you made about body positive propaganda. In fact, I'll go and get a link for it now, because I thought that was fantastic, because it wasn't just your movie stuff. I've got your channel over here, so I'll be able to find it. But I'm sure I made a thing about that years ago. It was, do you remember when? Remember the? I think it was in the thumbnail. Yeah, I can see it here. When they had like this woman on the London Underground, and there's the link. Everybody click that link and watch it. You won't be disappointed. They had basically this woman on the London Underground on a poster that isn't even by any objective metric unusual. You know, which also makes me think it's quite astounding to me how so many ethos can make a living. Being hot is like not that rare. It's sort of like
it's not. No.
30% of the population of women under the age of 30 are quite nice looking, and you go, oh, yeah, she's one. So that's another one we could talk about for hours. You'll notice I segue a lot. But she wasn't even particularly good looking. She just had a good figure. She wasn't like mega muscular. Like it looks like she's doing shitloads of fizz every single day. She's just normal looking. Like that's what my missus looks like with a bikini on. And they instantly slammed it, didn't they? Old sad sack cunt, the mayor of London. instantly fucking gibbed it, took it off the wall, and then replaced it with some big fat bird in a bikini. And apparently, this is good. So, you tell me. I mean, I've got a theory about it. What do you think is the heart of this? It's too easy to just say, it's commies. But what do you think's the heart of that movement? Do you think it's they genuinely want people to be miserable? Do you think that there's some sort of ulterior motives? Do you think it's purely ideological? Like, what do you think is the real nexus? What's the number one reason that blokes like Sadiq Khan ban posters that are objectively, certainly from a medical standpoint, good and healthy and should be encouraged? What do you think it is?
I think there's a number of reasons for it, because I thought about that quite in depth. And if you watch the video, one thing you'll notice is that I don't go into the why of it, because the why is it's its own video. And there's a bunch of reasons for it. But I would say if you're asking for reason number one, it's that the people in charge, the entrenched elite, the entrenched wealthy, money, corporations and so forth, they want people to basically just sit down, shut up, buy shit, do what you're told and don't complain about it. And if you're a big fat blob who isn't making any noise, you can't rebel in the streets because you can't walk the length of yourself. You're reliant on corporations for your food, and especially if you're medicine, big pharma love it. You know, it's another many millions of customers lined up for them. It's that corporations.
I never thought of that angle. I never thought of that angle. Yeah, big pharma like it as well, don't they? So it's not just. I always just think of it as, like I said, my opinion is they just want you to be unhappy, because when you're unhappy and depressed and reliant on the state for your benefits, you'll do as you're told.
Yeah, that's it. They don't want free thinking, intelligent, informed, healthy citizens.
Confident people.
Yeah, they want tax serfs. Yeah. And consumers that will, like I say, sit down and shut up and do what they're told. And I think there is also that's one of the reasons, but there's other ones as well. Like, it's ideologically satisfying to Marxists because by their mindset is that we're going to try to create a society where everyone is equal. And you see that in their approach to men and women with things like the transgender movement. And if you can make everyone just this gelatinous, amorphous blob where there's no real distinguish, like, because, you know, at a certain weight, there is no difference between men and women, really. You know, like you can say, well, in theory, their genitals are different, but at 300 pounds, you know, their genitals are basically obsolete. Do you know what I mean?
Get up to 600 pounds and that can just fuck a fold in your side, you know. Just sort of slop your cock in between a fold of flesh underneath their armpit. You're good to go. Happy days.
Yeah, that's one of them. And then the other one, I would say the big pharma aspect is part of it. A lot of people in my comment section, because I was reading through it, a lot of Americans seem to think that, geez, Americans despise big pharma. I know you live in the States. Is that true, or is that just a cliche?
No, I do. I live in the States now. Yeah, isn't it funny how you get rumours even when you're a complete tiny fish like me? I've heard some weird shit. Some guys having a go at me a few weeks ago saying, you've got an Asian wife. Why don't you go out with white women? I was like, no, I haven't. She's fucking white. But yeah, that is true. My missus isn't Asian, and I do live in the United States. I live in California, in Central California.
Yeah.
Purely by accident. My missus went to college in the United Kingdom. Met her years ago when I was still in the Corps. She lived out here for about 5 years, and then when her visa ran out, it was basically easier for us to move over here than it was for us to stay there, which is hilarious as well, isn't it? Because I mean, I'm going to end up going on another.
You know what you should have done? What you should have done is you should have went to France, put her in a dinghy, and swam her across to England.
I've made the joke many times. When
they would have put her up in a 5-star hotel.
When she got sent up, when she had to leave because her visa ran out, right? And then I was still in the UK while we were sorting shit out. And after about 5 months, she came back to visit me for like 6 weeks. She had enough money. We planned it. She, sorted it all out. I was working. I took some holiday. She was working, and she was going to stay for about 6 weeks. She landed in Heathrow, right? This is a young, sort of well-to-do white lass with 2 college degrees. She's got a master's degree and a college degree. And they stopped her at Heathrow, put her in a fucking cell with like 15 Somalians. Right? She rang me at tears at one point. Some bloke rang me up, Obviously, he was Pakistani origin. And he was like, Mr. Taylor, we have in Heathrow. I could barely understand the cunt. He said, where are you living? I said, York. He went, Yorkshire. I went, no, York. He went, Yorkshire. I was like, you do know York, right? It's a city, the capital of the North. York. It's not Yorkshire. It's York in Yorkshire. I had this massive argument with him. And he was like, oh, no, we might not let her in. We might let her in. I was like, you cheeky little twat. Anyways, long story short, she managed to get in after bursting into tears, and they checked all of her background and went through all of her bags and everything. It was a fucking nightmare. It took her 15 hours to come over for a couple of weeks. And I was like, this is the thing. She couldn't get a fucking visa because she's educated, highly educated white woman. But if she'd have jumped in the back of a fucking tomato wagon in Calais and come across, if she was a convicted rapist with a big scar down her face and a fucking cock like a Coke can, they'd have let her straight in. So you can't not get outraged, but also amused by it. But that's why I'm over here, because no shit, it was 10 times easier for me to get a green card for the States when we got married than it was for her to get one to the UK. So in the UK, we're not interested in Canadians. We're not interested in Americans. We're not interested in Europeans. We will, and that's not just hyperbole. That's what happened to my missus. And I've actually mentioned it numerous times whilst, chatting to people in bars and pubs and stuff. And the amount of well-to-do middle-class white people I've met who've told me stories about it here in this state is quite shocking. There was a girl at a concert who, when she heard my accent, she knew exactly where I was from. And I said, that's weird for an American. You always think I'm Irish or Scottish. And she said, oh, yeah, I lived there for like 4 years. I loved it. And then she started telling me this tale of woe, like she had a job, but they sent her a letter saying, you're £1,000 a year under the limit. So fuck you. And she got deported. It's like, it genuinely is an agenda. Like, if you're Canadian or Australian or American, they'll fuck you. But if you just rock up in the back of a fucking wagon and you're from the third world, you're laughing. They put you up in the Hilton. And that's, again, none of this is
not even a joke now. That's not even a joke now. They will literally put you up in a 5-star hotel. A fucking 5-star cruise is what's happening now. Last time I checked, they were spending £7 million a day putting up like dinghy migrants in 5-star hotels. Like, it's, if you were a comedy writer trying to write a skit to make fun of the government for how they treat migrants compared to, say, how they treat the homeless population, you couldn't come up with this shit. Like, they'd say, now let's forget about the whole put them on a cruise ship. That's too ridiculous.
Yeah, you couldn't make it up.
It's happening, like.
Really, really mad. So that's what I don't get. I try not to be a conspiracy theorist, but you look at how bad things are now, and you have to conclude that there is a plan. Like, I don't want to get into the depths on that, because I know there's loads of mad shit.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole about 10 miles deep. You don't want to be.
No. But and I've always subscribed to the mantra that you should never attribute anything to malice that could easily be arrived at by incompetence. You've probably heard the quote, right? It's quite a famous.
Yeah.
Never attribute anything to malice when it can easily be explained by incompetence. And that's what I've always thought. But like I said, from all the people I've talked to over here, well-to-do people who've said, oh yeah, I really loved it in England or in Ireland or in Scotland or Wales or anywhere, and I loved it there, and I worked there for 5 years, and then they just sent me a letter and said, sorry, you're only earning £38,000 a year, see you later. But we let in at least 40,000 unvetted fighting age men every year. Now, that cannot be incompetence. Like, you can be as fucking thick as a plank of wood, and if you get your letter across your desk from the Home Office and says, yeah, we deported 9,000 tax-paying American girls with college degrees this year, but we are letting in 43,000 unvetted, unvettable, possibly criminal fighting age men, you would go, right, we need to fix this. But they never have. So is it fucking incompetence, really?
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 main reasons for mass immigration, because I've had people ask me, even older people that I know will turn around and they're not political. Older people in Ireland will say, geez, what's going on here? What's the reason for this? And like, there's 5 main reasons for mass immigration. I don't know if I can ring them all off the top of my head, but it's something like they want the banks like it because they can circulate debt to the new people that are arriving. And the landed gentry like it because it's rent surfs for them. So
yeah, they get cheap employees, don't they? Cheap maids and
cheap employees and cheap tenants. is another one. It's cheap labor. It artificially inflates the size of the GDP, which allows the government to borrow money more easily. And it's the political left wing importing voters. And that's before you even get to the ideological factors such as like anti-white Marxism or anti-nationalism. Do you know what I can't stand, for example? And I'm sure you'd be able to talk about this better than I can because you were a soldier. People will associate nationalism with the likes of Germany in the 1930s, like Hitler's Germany. And I'm thinking, no, that they weren't nationalists. They destroyed nations. They invaded nations. They were imperialists. They weren't nationalists. They were the opposite. But people post World War II Europeans, like the two wars destroyed Europe psychologically. And what came out of that is this sort of determination to, oh, well, if only we had the wisdom of the rest of the world, then we wouldn't do this to ourselves. So I think that kind of evolved into this self-hating Marxism, and that's why a lot of well-to-do liberal types want to import people from all over the place because they despise nationalism, they despise the idea of a nation. Although that's far down the list, like number 6 or 7 on the list. The reasons I mentioned prior to that are more important. That
well, how old are you, by the way?
Population. I'm 33.
33. Oh, quite a lot younger then. 10 years younger, basically. But I was going to say, I'm assuming it was the same when you were growing up as I was. I think a lot of it was, and we know this, right? I mean, again, I'm not going to disagree on the rabbit hole, but we know it was like 1920s Gramsci, shit like that. They know that that's the genesis of this ideology. And the issue with it is they've basically spent the entirety of the last 40 years aggressively marching through the institutions, right? And in my childhood, I just think about my upbringing in primary school and in secondary school. All we learned about was the Nazis. Like, you couldn't move for Nazi shit when I was a kid. Nobody told us about the Holodomor or Stalin or Mao. I'd never heard about the Great Leap until I was like in my 20s. Our entire indoctrination at school was all about the Nazis. So they did it so that everybody just instantly hears the word nationalism and just freaks out. And as educated people have said many times, just look at the death toll. Like, a swastika should elicit the same sort of concern as a hammer and sickle flag does, but it doesn't. One of them is perfectly acceptable for kids to wear T-shirts of, walk down the street with a Che Guevara and a fucking commie flag. Doesn't bother people. And that's what tells me that we have been conditioned. Nationalism, as I said many times about Trump, shouldn't be a dirty word. Ethno-nationalism, fair enough to some extent, because it is very difficult when you start going down those roads to sort of delineate between it. But Donald Trump called himself a nationalist. You can Google what the word means. What is controversial about somebody saying, I think I should put my country first? Like, I think that for everybody. I think that for people that are even, historical enemies of England. Germany should be, the job of the Prime Minister of Germany should be exclusively to worry about German people. And the job of the French Prime Minister should be to worry about the French people. And the job of the Irish Taoiseach should be to fucking look after the Irish people. But for some fucking reason, this globalist club now, they really do sit there. You'll get like a British or an American president, a twat like Biden, or a Prime Minister like Boris Johnson. And something happens and they go, how's this going to work out for Nigeria? And I just think, on the face of it, it's lunacy. Yeah. Because it's like being the CEO of a company. If the CEO at KFC got said, right, we're going to make this new burger. It's like the Zinger Tower burger. It's fucking mint. We're going to sell millions. The CEO's first question shouldn't be, is this going to negatively impact Burger King? Because I'm worried about Burger King. That's what we do. This weird commie utopianism makes them worry about the entire world rather than their own people. And it shouldn't be controversial to just say, I don't hate anyone. I don't want to kill anyone. But I'm worried about my own people because I'm elected on a platform that says it's my fucking job to worry about my own people. And I don't understand how they've sold that to the entire Western world, that people like Justin Trudeau should be worrying about Morocco and Albania. Why is that his job?
Because the opposite, if you do the opposite, you're called a populist. I was wondering what the hell does the word populist even mean? Because whenever a left-wing politician is elected, it's democracy has won, right? It's the success of democracy.
Yeah.
Whenever a right-wing politician is elected, like what happened in Italy, it's populism. It's
He's
the
a
rise of
populist,
populism.
yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell? What do they mean when they say populist? And I figured it out. A populist is someone who promises to act in the interests of the people of the country and whose main priority is to improve the quality of life of the people of the country. That is a populist now. They're the enemy. They're the bad people because they're not concerned about
the world,
migrants from Somalia. Like I see German people saying, a German politician, she went on stage at some World Economic Forum or one of those do you know those meetings where Bond villains basically get together and discuss how to conquer the world?
Yeah. Mark Stein always talks about them. That's the World Economic Forum.
Something
Klaus
like
Schwab,
that.
Yeah.
There was this German woman, and she was a German politician. She got up on stage and she said something like, "I know that my German voters won't like it, but my main priority right now is the Ukrainian people and to help them in their war." And I'm like, "So that you were not elected to do that.
Yeah.
That is not your prerogative. You're a public servant. You were elected on a platform of presumably doing things for the German people or for your voter base or for whoever it is. It's none of your business what's going on in Ukraine."
This is why it's so funny to me, though. Like, this is what I mean. I'm an absurdist. You know, I'm black-pilled and I'm an absurdist. I find it funny, which is why I keep doing what I'm doing. I get more amused than angry about it. I can't stop laughing because it's so ludicrous. It is on the face of it ludicrous. It's like going in to see the doctor because you just have to distill everything down to a contract between two people. It's always down to the individual. They're always talking about rights and freedoms and liberalism. Well, the most important thing is the individual. That's where you get your rights from. It's yours and you're on your own. And it's distilled down to that. If you've got like a doctor and you're going to see the doctor and you say, "I've been feeling a little bit ill. I think you should check my prostate." And he goes, "Sorry, mate, I'm just going to go and feel my next door neighbour's fucking balls instead." You go, "That doesn't make any sense now. What are you worrying about this stranger for?" And that's exactly the same thing with our political leaders. It's absurd on the face of it. Like, it makes no sense at all why everybody's quality of life should suffer because of the weird idealistic utopianism of these, which is why I just call them all commies, because it is. It's the whole thing. I mean, it's more Trotskyism, isn't it? That sort of real hardcore idealism. But essentially, all the politicians in the Western world are trots. They have this weird utopian globalist worldview. So when you say, "My kids can't get a dentist appointment," they say, "Oh yeah, but try getting one in Bazooto land." And they go, "Checkmate." Like, that's a fucking good argument. And that's why it makes me think the conspiracy theorists are onto something. Because it cannot be. It's certainly not logical, which is why it makes me laugh so much. And it can't be an accident that every single one of them agrees on everything. It's probably the only era in world history, we've got a few thousand years to go back, where they all agree on everything. On everything. Like, if you don't agree, like Trump, you get destroyed and the rules are different. If Trump does anything, they impeach him. If Biden takes money off Ukraine or China, they ignore it. The rules are different for anybody who goes against it. So Trudeau, Johnson, Macron, doesn't matter what your party is, doesn't matter, the Conservatives are as woke as the Labour Party. Doesn't matter what your party is, doesn't matter what your background is. If you're not in the globalist cabal where you think nationalism is evil, your country shouldn't matter and your borders shouldn't exist. And when you look at a problem, you've got to say, yeah, but how's it going in Algeria? It makes you think there has to be something behind the conspiracy theories. And like I said, I've always been skeptical. Maybe in the last 18 months is when I've said to people who I talked to, like Chris Thrall, I've been like, you know what, you were right. Like, all these people talking about these cabals and that, and I was like, nah. After the last couple of years, probably since about 3 years ago when they started COVID and all of that, I have started thinking it must be. It must be because they all agree on everything all the time. The French and the German and the British prime ministers never agreed on fuck all for about 1,000 years, but now they're in total lockstep. and it makes you think, who's pulling the strings? I have no fucking idea. But it can't be an accident.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could go on all day talking about that, but I suppose we'll move on and talk about a movie or something. Seeing as you wanted to do that. I know.
Yeah, I do.
It's funny you mentioned Winter Soldier. I burst out loud laughing. Like I was on the computer. I'm making a wee video. It's actually a very long video at the minute, and I was going through these clips, and one of them was from the Winter Soldier, and it's a scene where he's lecturing a bunch of politicians, and everyone. It was so weird. Everyone's sort of standing around him in a circle, right? And they're all dressed normal. They've got like a suit and tie on, and they're looking at this guy dressed up like a bird in what looks like a kind of weird leather gimp suit or something.
It's really weird, yeah.
And they're all looking at him like, yeah. And he's making this really serious speech. And I'm looking at this thinking, this is hilarious. Like, he looks ridiculous. He's speaking so seriously, but he's dressed like a bird. And everyone's taking it really... And then I realized that, like, comic book movies, they're so absurd. I actually think they're on the way out, funny enough, because when you look at the statistics for 2022, of the top 20 movies, only 5 of them, the top 20 highest grossing movies, and this was before Avatar came out, so it's probably like only 4 or 5 of them are comic book movies, and I think 3 of them are flops. So I think it's that whole comic book thing is, I think it's on the way out. I think the next big genre will probably be video game movies.
Well, we can talk about that at length, good, because I'm, like I said, I am more of a nerdy bastard than people realize with the most of my political stuff. I collected comics for about 20 years. Like, I'm mega into them. From the age of about 9 to like my mid-20s, I bought them regular. And that was back in the day when it wasn't cool to collect comics, because now obviously it's mainstream, isn't it? All the nerdy stuff's cool now. Comics, D&D, tabletop war game, and all that stuff. I like all of it. I'll disagree with regards to that. I don't think that necessarily the comic book movie genre is dead, because there's
not dead, but I think it's on the way. I think it's beginning to go on the way out. For example, like Black Adam, you take The Rock, who's he's a star. Like, I don't think he's one of the biggest stars. But he is a star. He's a big draw. And
he's charismatic.
He's charismatic, but he tried his best with the marketing of that movie, but that movie flopped in spite of his best efforts, and that wasn't the only failure. And the MCU shite now as well. Like, to be fair, I mean, I say it's on the way out, but at the same time, the MCU aren't helping. Like, everything they do is crap. Like, you put the label MCU on it, it's like a guarantee of low quality now.
Shite. But see, what I'm not massively disagreeing with you. What I was gonna say is it's doing poorly. But it's not just because, I don't even think it's primarily because of audience fatigue. It's doing poorly because of ridiculous woke programming. If you make a good comic book movie based off some of the classics, and they've got 50 years of good material to pick from. I had thousands of comic books. Some of the arcs are fantastic. If they did one actually genuinely the same as the comic, following the numbers, it would be popular. The reviews would be off the charts. You would make a YouTube video and go, this is fucking spot on, and people would watch it. It isn't. I honestly don't think it's audience fatigue with comic books. I think it's fucking wokeism. If they stop trying to make it aggressively political, where you go in and get a lecture, people will watch it. I mean, how many MCU films did they make that were really good? It was before the woke era. Iron Man 1 was spot on. The first Winter Soldier was a fucking brilliant film. I think that was one of my favourite, it was almost like a spy thriller. It was really, really good. Remember the one where Captain America knocks the shite out of about 10 blokes in the lift? Quality. Like, that film was fucking mint. They've done about 8 or 9 brilliant ones, and then they started subtly introducing the woke shit, and then it doesn't make any sense, and then you're constantly going, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, if they just got rid of it, they could make good comic book movies, and people will go. The public are always cleverer than the critics think they are. Like, how for years they always said Lord of the Rings, it's fucking only nerds are into that. And for decades in the 60s and the 70s, it was the most popular book. The British people loved it. They're all buying it and all reading it. And all of the wankers who work for the Guardian, the BBC, would go, no, that's not highbrow. That's fucking cretins fucking literature. And then they make a film of it, and it was a massive smash hit because it's good. and there's good stuff there. They just need to make it by the numbers. If Legolas was in a wheelchair and Gimli was sucking Aragorn off, I guarantee the Lord of the Rings fucking trilogy wouldn't have went anywhere either. They just have to follow the good stories that the general public like. I think it is expressly political. I do. The Rings of Power was aggressively political. The Witcher is aggressively political. Everyone's from it. I mean, on the face of it, it's just destroys the suspension of disbelief. And and you'll know that being a movie reviewer, and I know that being a comic book fan. That's the most important thing. It used to annoy me when I was in my 20s and I'd we read a comic and my missus would say oh, it's stupid that, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, as long as it makes sense in the world, it makes sense. That's the big difference, right? It has to be consistent, like the powers and stuff.
Yeah, I had to think quite a bit about that because I did a Rings of Power video and I was getting criticized in the comments. That was actually, funny enough, that's my most disliked video. They don't show you the ratio anymore, but that video only has 90% likes. And so, 10% of people dislike that. I don't know if I would call them Rings of Power fans, but I think the left wing, sort of the woke, they were really disappointed at how badly Rings of Power did, because that was supposed to be a big flagship show for them. They were happy that they finally had that scalp. They'd finally destroyed Tolkien's world, because they hate Tolkien. He's a very conservative Christian man. They wanted to take a big woke dump in his world. They wanted that scalp, and they got it. And when there was this massive backlash against the show, I think many of them were absolutely infuriated by it, because it didn't get nominated for any awards. The audience scores were shite. Even the Guardian, in the end, threw it under the bus and said, "Look, this thing's shite." And a lot of them were really unhappy about that, and so they were posting things in my comments so one of the common things would be so it's okay to have a wizard doing magic in Lord of the Rings, but you can't have a black dwarf. You're racist. And what they're doing is they're confusing realism with believability. So, for example, a wizard doing magic isn't realistic, right? But it is believable within the context of a world where that makes sense and where it is properly explained. Okay. But when you have a black dwarf living in a mountain and surrounded by white dwarfs, that's not realistic, because they live in a mountain. Where's she getting her melon from? And secondly, it's not believable, because how can a people that live in a mountain and have just been ethnically homogenous for thousands of years, how can there just be a random black person there? And then the hobbits are even worse. The fake hobbits, there were maybe 100 of them.
I loved your ranting about them. Fucking quality. Detestable, muddy little fucking Irish blokes, basically. But honestly,
that's true.
This is what I'm saying. And I think, I know you're going to think I'm biased because I'm so political, but I think 90% of it's that. Because, and this is my theory, it's that the number one important thing is buy-in. And to get the buy-in, you have to have the suspension of disbelief. And when you don't have it, you're not interested. That's the only thing that matters when you're in a film. So they don't have to do anything else. They just have to do that and nail that consistency. Here's another good one. Did you watch the Wheel of Time series?
I heard about it, but I didn't watch it. I do struggle to watch these series. I gave up on She-Hulk, and that was my most popular video, but I just could not get through it. What about the Wheel of Time?
See, this is good for me as well, because I'm like I said, big nerd. Read that loads of times. I've read the entirety of the Wheel of Time series through twice. I got mega into it in the sort of early noughties. My dad gave me, I think he'd only written like 7 of them at the time. But it's a fantastic series. I've read it all the way through. And you couldn't get into it. That's why it instantly got canned, because the fans, they make out as if, because these utopianists want to live in a world where every single shop or mall or bus looks like the subway train in New York City in 2023. They shoehorn them in and think it doesn't make any difference at all, because one world, man. And the fact of the matter is, when you've read comics or books or anything that has got an existing fan base, you have to have the believability, because that's what gets the buy-in. And in the Wheel of Time, just like on Game of Thrones, which is which is what I'm saying. It's why I think it's the number one thing. Game of Thrones was wildly popular because they stuck to the books and they had the diversity, but it made sense because they were all in the correct regions. So the Northerners were all pasty, black people were from like Essos, and then you had, or even in Lord of the Rings, right? All of the Easterlings were ethnic minorities because it was like, yeah, they're from a sunny area. And in the Wheel of Time, it's all about the races. It's like all of the people, the heroes in it, are descendants of Manetheren. And it's like where all of it's like the Age of Heroes in Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. And they're all descendants from there. And they live in this little tiny place called Two Rivers. And it's ethnically homogenous. And there's an entire continent of black people called the Senshan, and they live across the ocean. And in later books, they invade and they come over, and they're ethnically homogenous, they're black. So you've got, and the Asian race is quite clearly Lan, who's one of the main characters, he's Asian. And you've got all of them represented. But when you just turn on in episode 1 and Two Rivers looks like a London fucking bus, all the fans just go, well, this doesn't make sense. It shatters the believability straight away. So,
well, that's because the fans are racist.
But it's not, is it? This is what I mean. You know that, and I know that because we actually like these things.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so annoying. Talking about that type of stuff, when they keep saying, oh, Black Panther, like the first black superhero, and you know, when I was 16, everyone was raving about Blade. Like, it was so popular. It got 2 sequels, Blade.
I watched 1 and 2 recently. Pretty good, like pretty damn good.
Not bad. Hold up, all right. The effects are terrible, though. I'm on the end of Blade. But
no, man, I like the effects.
Did you?
Good choreography. It gets a wee bit dodgy sometimes when they do the CGI. It looks like a cheesy video game cutscene, but the choreography is really good. Wesley Snipes, very good, very physical in it. The fight scenes are fun, pretty well filmed. Like, thank God it was before the whole shaky cam, constant cut and edit every 1 or 2 seconds. Like, so it still looked pretty good. It was before that whole Bourne era where they had, the fighting style I'm talking about? They did it in Resident Evil.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So it was just before that, so it didn't suffer from that. And it looks pretty good today. Like, it's solid, good stuff.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Or it's like when they say there's when everyone ruthlessly tortured Jennifer Lawrence for saying I'm the first like action woman. And
she invented women.
Yeah, we've been doing that for 30 years, you dippy mare. So this is what I'm saying. It's like, I honestly think that it's expressly political. And if they go back to just being entertaining, people will watch them. I don't think it's the end of the genre, or it's not fixable. They just have to make them canon. Same with Star Wars. Everyone's ragging on Star Wars now.
Don't get me started on Star Wars. Like, that was my favorite franchise as a kid, and growing up, loved the video games. I even read like some of the extended universe books. And my God, that was one of the things that, like, I had to start talking about TV shows on YouTube. Obi-Wan. My God, did you watch that? Appalling.
I watched like 6 episodes and just wrapped. Yeah.
I couldn't believe how bad it was. It's like, this is shockingly bad. Like,
I remember whinging about the original because, again, I'm a fucking nerd. I know loads about Star Wars. I was well into it. I remember going to watch The Phantom Menace in the cinema and moaning about it afterwards to me mate, going, how come when it suits them, they can run at like 200 miles an hour because you can use the Force to augment your body and slow the world around you? So the droids come and they go, and they're off at like 200 miles an hour. And then he's chasing someone later and he's like a fat bloater jogging for his bus in the rain. I was like, you need to be consistent. That's again where they started going downhill.
Yeah.
But I mean, it shows how bad they are, because if you go back to The Phantom Menace now compared to the fucking recent glut of shite they've made, it's almost like an extravaganza.
It's quite watchable. Like, compared to, you take anything they've done recently, you compare, even Andor. People said they liked Andor. I thought Andor was shite.
Shite.
And you compare it, and it's like, this is actually fun. I mean, I know that Jar Jar Binks is annoying, and I know the wee kid that plays Darth Vader wasn't a very good actor. Like, he was only 5 minutes old. What are you going to do? But like, it was watchable, and it was entertaining, and Darth Maul was great, and it had some fun lightsaber fights, and it was nice to look at. It was reasonably well shot and filmed, but Jesus Christ, compared to the shite they have now, which is pretty much unwatchable.
I was telling my missus that the other day because I went back and watched Predator 2. And I was amazed. I remember the reason I watched it was I haven't seen it since I was about, 20 or something. And I went back and watched it because I keep thinking everything they make shite now. And I went back and watched Predator 2 and it was decent. I was sat there going, it's mad this. When it first came out, it was so shit compared to the first Predator, I thought. I'm not watching that again. And then 20 years later, it's half decent. Other than the scene where Bill Paxton, who we keeps calling Kid, even though he's like 10 years younger than him, unloads 3 magazines into it at close range and it doesn't do anything. Other than that one part, Predator 2 was quite decent as well. It just shows how far we've fallen with
does,
modern cinema. Because it's not terrible.
It's quite astonishing. What you were talking about with world building there, and like the reason you'll always get the salt and pepper cast now is because they can't have an ethnically homogenous white part of the world, especially because it goes against the message. It goes against the fundamental core principles of their ideology. And as for world building, they despise nerds and they despise nerd culture. Absolutely fucking hate them. They think they're all a bunch of like basement dwelling incels. They have this really weird, and they're not like nerds aren't that. Like nerds have grown up. They're, like I'm married. I've got a kid. I'm basically a nerd. I love like Star Wars and gaming back in the day, and a lot of nerd culture. Or guys like you former soldier. Like they have this completely outdated idea of what a nerd is, and they don't understand the culture and they despise it. And they don't understand what world building is. Like world building, people really care about it. That's one of the reasons they despised Rings of Power so much, because the world building was fucking abysmal. Like it was astoundingly bad. Like here's just one example. There's a scene where Elrond and Celebrimbor, that's 2 elves, they are going to Moria, the mountain of the dwarves, to try to find some contract workers to build a forge, and they lead. So it loads up a little map, and then it plays some music, and you see them walking on the map, this little line going to Moria. And when they arrive there, they're dressed in the exact same clothes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In the exact
and they don't even have a horse.
They don't have a horse. They don't have a backpack, and it's like you walked all that way with no backpack, no horse, in the same pair of clothes. And by the way, those aren't traveling clothes. It's like a velvet cloak or something. It's like something that I don't know, the MC of an orgy would wear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'd be totally fucked. He'd be covered in shit, starving, fucking dying.
And they were spotless. They arrive after this journey, and they're spotless, like they just walked onto the set.
But that's leading to what I'm saying about this is why it's my number one reason. You just have to get that one thing right, and then everyone cares about it. It's true because people love movies so much and get so into it that they make people cry. Yeah. So it's not just my opinion, it's a fact. Like if you do a good job, people immerse themselves in it because the real world's a bit shit and it's a bit depressing. And you've got a boss and people get ill and the kids are fucking annoying. So all humans love to lose themselves in some entertainment. And if you do it well, I mean, there's loads of films that make people cry all the time because they get into it. They know it's not real, but they get into it just to escapism, lose themselves for a few hours and fucking love it. And they get to the end and the tears are all down the face and they go, yeah. Because, I remember going to see Titanic in the cinema when I was a teenager.
Titanic's great. I love that movie.
And I remember there was 2 like gobshite. I was probably like 16 or something. And there was 2 lads who were in the 20s, like tough guys, drinking cans. It was in Middlesbrough, drinking cans in the cinema. And all the way through, they were taking the piss and doing me at it. But at the very, very end, where he kicks the bucket, they all went mega quiet. And I knew for a fact they were that close to fucking bursting into tears. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you have to get that right. And they think people like me and you are just nerds whinging for whinging's sake. But it's the single most important thing. You have to get rid of the suspension of disbelief is everything. So you might not like it, but you have to stop doing the race quotas for the casting. I mean, the Blood Origins now, there's everything you can think of.
There's I tried to watch it. I watched Blood Origin for 10 minutes and I just thought, I fucking can't. Like, I'm busy. I have things to do. I have a 2-year-old. I can't be spending my life watching this. Do you know what I mean?
You know what it reminds me of? I remember about 10 years ago talking to my mates in the pub about it. Because before I started doing YouTube, we used to best to be friends with this. And I remember watching the BBC, and for once there was like a white woman on a kids' TV program. It was like CBeebies, and there was like a black fella and a Chinese bloke and a white woman. I went, oh, it's funny to see a white woman on the BBC this morning. And then she held her hand up and she had a stump, like she actually was disabled. I swear down, I'm not making it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, again, I don't have a problem at all with there being a black woman, an Asian woman, and a handy-capable person on the children's programming, but the way they do it so aggressively makes me think they genuinely are a bit bigoted or racist, like, because the director's got to be there going, get me another Chinese in here. Like, when you're obsessed over what they are, then you're the bigoted person. And that woman who got the job, it wasn't just a coincidence that she was missing a hand. They've done it on purpose. They're like, right, we need everything, get me everything in it. And that's what they've done with Blood Origins. It's literally like you've got a black woman, a white man, a little midget, a fucking gay bloke. It's like they like get everything. And when you get everything, you've wrecked the suspension of disbelief. People think it's just bad-tempered bastards like me.
It's a diversity quota on screen. Like you call it a bus in London, that's a very good analogy. It's like you walked through downtown LA and you just picked out random people and said, right, you're going to be in the movie, you're going to be in the movie, you're going to be in the movie, you're going to be in the movie. And it doesn't.
It has to look this way.
It's very difficult to understand for people because, for example, you know, you can look at people like me and you and you can say, right, okay, well, they're obviously Europeans. And then you hear us and you think, oh, okay, so they're Irish or English or something. And you're a human being. We naturally make assumptions about people based on their accent. Funny enough, actually, I heard something recently that accentism is actually worse than racism. Like people have far more biases toward people based on their accent compared to based on the race. So, for example, if you're middle class English, you will more readily trust a middle class black person with a kind of posh accent than you would trust a Geordie. It's quite fascinating.
100%. I've said that for years now. I went on a rant about that last year on here. It can't be a coincidence that all the really big YouTubers are very well spoken. People from England that have made it well. Sargon of Akkad is very well spoken.
He's very good. Yeah.
The Critical Drinker's Scottish, but he's very well spoken. He doesn't sound like a fucking pissed weegie, does he? He puts his voice through a synthesizer and he still sounds quite well spoken. Sounds like he's got a soft Edinburgh lull rather than a full blown Las Vegas pisshead. I think having a really nice, well spoken accent definitely helps. I don't think it's a coincidence. In fact, are there any fucking Geordie YouTubers? Probably no big ones, is there?
They don't have internet up there.
Total Biscuit was, I believe he was from somewhere in the Northeast, but even he must have took a voice coach because he spoke really well. You've got to have, for some reason, human beings, as you say, we do make judgments about people. And I think accentism is more of a thing than racism. Like a posh black bloke with a very posh accent will definitely be more trustworthy than a white bloke who's like a white Scouser. Fucking hell, Scousers, everybody knows what they're like.
Yeah,
definitely a thing that.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I was so infuriated, and I wasn't. This was a minor scandal in Ireland when the Rings of Power fake hobbits had the Irish accents. Oh my god, it made me. I wanted to reach through the screen and tear them to bits. I hated them, and I just
Picard as well.
What happened in Picard? I couldn't watch that Star Trek shit. What happened in Picard?
No, I'm just saying in Picard, because they're doing, we have to have all the things. We have to have get me a black woman in here, get me a disabled in here, get me an Irish in here. Oh, we need a Scotsman. There's no world, Bill. It's ridiculous.
No, it is ridiculous. And that's not how the real, they say, oh, we want it to reflect what the real world looks like today. The world doesn't look like that. No. That's not how people operate. Even in places that are extremely racially diverse, for example, London. People don't all hang out. It's not like you go to a bar and you see a group of people and there's an Asian and a black guy and a woman in a wheelchair. They don't do that. The Pakistanis hang out with other Pakistanis and the Algerians hang out with the Algerians. Even French people hang out with other French people, generally speaking. I know this. I lived in France and I was part of a very, very bohemian sort of multicultural community. But like the Arabs always hung out with the other Arabs. There's very little, especially in Europe, maybe it's different than in the States, but in Europe, there's very, very little cross-racial integration. And generally speaking, like if you get East Asian students, they will always hang out with white people, generally speaking, in France, England, and the like.
Yeah.
You're not going to see them hanging around with Africans or Arabs or other people like that, because those, these groups don't integrate with each other.
Well, on Picard, you laugh. His Romulan housekeeper is a proper, full-on, like, she sounds like a pissed Irish woman. I swear down, you're fucking Romulan. He's like, hello, Romulan housekeeper. And he's like, hey, you're fucking having a laugh. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Oh, it's like unbelievable.
Oh, the stage Irish accent. That was the other
really,
thing about Rings of Power, that stupid bloody... Do you know that stupid bloody Paddy of the Leprechaun stage Irish accent? Like, oh, Jesus.
She says feck. She says, someone does her head in and she goes, feck me. Like this fucking Romulan, Irish Romulan, I swear down. And that's what I'm saying. All of it is linked. It's not just me being a miserable bastard like a broken record. It's that you need to have the buy-in, you need to have the believability. And if you want to have it, you need to stick to the canon. And it would be the same if in Japan they made 7 samurai, but 2 of them are black, 1 of them was an Asian woman, 2 of them are Japanese blokes, and then, roll a lesbian, samurai sword with wheels.
They did that? They did a remake of The Magnificent Seven, which was itself an American spin on the 7 Samurai.
On 7 Samurai, yeah.
It was with, what's his name? He's a very popular black actor, older now.
Idris Elba?
No, he was in Training Day. Can't remember his name just
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington was in it, and so they had him, and then they had a Comanche, and they had a white guy, and they had a Hispanic guy. But when they brought in the Comanche, the writers were obviously struggling to figure out, okay, how do we get a Comanche to join the Magnificent Seven? And the way they did it in the movie was Denzel Washington literally walks past this Comanche guy on a horse, and the Comanche guy is out hunting, and he just looks at him and says, hey, you want to join us? And the Comanche's like, yeah. and that's it. That's literally it. They couldn't think of anything else.
This is what I mean. Or you could take a really famous, black story. I don't know them off the top of my head because I'm British, but there's going to be some story that's almost as famous, as Lord of the Rings is to English people. If you were to go to Sierra Leone or whatever and say, tell us a fantastic story that's been passed down through the ages, and they told you it, and then you went to Hollywood, filmed it, but instead of having it all black people, because it's from Sierra Leone, you just had 2 ginger blokes, a blonde-haired lass, a fucking black bloke, a Chinese fella. They wouldn't watch it. They wouldn't watch it because you've destroyed the buy-in. And this is what I mean. I think it's the single biggest issue with the entertainment industry. And until they get with the program and stop trying to make everywhere look like downtown LA, they'll never make a good fucking film because it just wrecks the believability of the whole thing. And as we talked about earlier, it doesn't need to be realistic, but it does need to be believable. And they aren't. So,
yeah,
done.
That's exactly it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll have to end on a positive. What about, let's think of one positive before we go. What about what film are you actually looking forward to in 2023?
I'm looking forward to Oppenheimer. I think that'll be a good one.
Right, yeah. It will, but again, how realistic is it going to be? Is it going to be like where Winston Churchill's getting poetry quoted to him by a random black man on the tube in London?
I know what you're getting at. We'll see. But I think the cast looks good. It does look like a good movie. He's, Christopher Nolan is quite good. I would be interested to see what to do with the Mario movie because, like I say, I think that might kick off the whole video game movie thing. But it's a kids movie, so I'm not particularly excited about it. I'm excited about the Little Mermaid remake. Can't wait to watch that. What about you?
To be honest, I'm very cynical about all of the entertainment in the coming year. As I've said, I think things need to get 10 times worse before they get better. But Nolan, right? I mean, I did fancy Oppenheimer because I love him. But even him, it sort of depressed me because I think, how he is a good example. It springs to my mind when I think about Nolan. Did you ever watch the first season of Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch? It's basically what made him famous.
Yeah.
I love Sherlock Holmes. I read all them books when I was a teenager. Love him. So I've got the audio books. I've done everything with Sherlock Holmes. All the fake ones, where they got radio actors to do it in the States. And I love the first season of Sherlock. I thought, this is amazing. They did such a good job with transmitting the old ones. There's a story in the what's the first one? A Study in Scarlet, where he gives him his pocket watch and he tells him 5 things about him just by looking at the pocket watch. He's like, oh, this belonged to a drunk. And he's like, how did you know that? You've had someone spying on me. And he says, no, you can see because it's made of this. It's expensive. It's got gold on it. There's loads of dents and nicks in it. A sober man would never put it in the same pocket as his change. It sort of like proves his deductive reasoning. And they changed it over and he did it all with his smartphone. So he has a quick look at it and then he knows loads of shit about him. And it was so well done. I thought that was brilliant, that. And then progressively, because it was wildly popular, because it was good, it vanished up its own arse. And the second season was dog shit. And then the third one was fucking awful. And I feel as if Nolan, I hope I'm wrong, but this is what I'm saying about the disagreement about Oppenheimer. I think he's sort of done that because he did like Memento, which was fucking quality, and all of his fucking early stuff. The first couple of Batman, I didn't think the last one was particularly good, but he was spot on. And then that last one, the time jump in fucking... I watched it twice and I read the synopsis and I still couldn't get my head around that. I feel as if he's so good a director, but he's had so much smoke blown up his ass the last few years. I feel like he sort of vanished up his own ass, and now I'm a little bit skeptical about what's going to happen.
That's a very good point. I think that happened with the last Avatar movie to an extent. I call it the Jar Jar Binks effect. It's when a director gets so popular that the people and so powerful that the people around him simply don't have the balls to say, "Look, man, this is a bad idea."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. So, and I think that definitely happened in the last Avatar movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's definitely a bit of like Jar Jar Binks effect going on there. And so I could see that. I'll look out for that in Oppenheimer. I'll watch that last Nolan movie and I'll look out for it.
I watch my favourite YouTubers when I don't want to see anything. I watched 2 different reviews of it, but I'm definitely not watching it myself. And I watched 6 episodes of Andor after Critical Drinker said it was good, and it was the same.
Andor's
it was a bit shit. Shite. We've just got low standards.
And not as bad as the other stuff, but I found it very pretentious, dull. I thought the characters were one note. And I honestly, it might make me sound like a Philistine, and fuck it if I do, fine, I'm a Philistine. It wasn't Star Wars. Just wasn't.
Yeah. Shite. You know what I hate about these new ones, on about consistency? The Empire. As soon as they're fucking aiming a gun at anyone who matters, they're the most reasonable, civilized people ever. They're better than modern American coppers. I'm sick of seeing, like, I watched the Last Jedi. Every time they get anyone, it's like, freeze, put your hands up. They never want to shoot anyone. And I was like, well, the Empire's fucking reasonable. And then when they need them to be villains again, like when this is the last episode I watched, he's walking down the beach and for no reason, they knock the shite out of him and give him 6 years in jail. I was like, that doesn't really fit with how they behave. When you need to move the story along, they're like any normal modern Western government, just want a bit of control. And then they only take prisoners and they never like shoot anyone for no reason. And then when you need them to move the story on, suddenly they're a massive bunch of cunts and they're just brutalizing people. I think that's what they've ruined in all of the new ones. They were just evil in the first 3. They were all evil. Like now, it's just shit. It's just shit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I've had that theory about a lot of things in life. I think everybody only has a finite amount of talent. It's like U2, first 3 albums, 4 albums, fucking amazing. And then Elevation and all that shite. It's like, I think there's only a finite amount of skill, no matter how good you are. And I'm worried that now Nolan's got to that point where he's had too much praise and he's made too many films, and now he's going to start sucking ass. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I'm going to put your channel on again because there's a few people in the chat asking if you've got a channel. So I'll just put a link up for you. But yes, Despot of Antrim's got a channel. And when Bootneck's relaxing and watching other people, he's one of them that I like to watch. I genuinely enjoy it. I think I enjoy your movie reviews just as much as the big boys like Critical Drinker. And you don't use a synthesizer to make you sound pissed, which is a novel. There's something cool about people drinking too much and using drugs and stuff to young people, and I think that was a novel way to get everybody on board, sort of sounding pissed when he's doing his reviews. But I enjoy yours just as much of it, and I hope that you carry on doing it regardless of the shenanigans YouTube will inevitably play with you, because you don't have woke views. So keep doing it, and hopefully in a year's time you'll have a lot more subscribers than me.
I'll keep at it and we'll see what happens. But thanks very much for having me on, Bootneck. I enjoyed it. was my first live stream. I had a good time.
Oh, was it?
Aye.
Well, nice one. As you can tell, I can talk a glass eye to sleep, so we'll have to do this again sometime. I'm sure we can think of more shit to ramble about for another hour.
I'm sure we can. But thanks very much for having me on, Bootneck, and thanks everybody for listening to us talk shite for however long we talk shite for.
All right, cheers, mate. I'll see you around.
All right, I'll see you. Have a good one.
See you later. And everybody else who's still around, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll go back to pulling apart the BBC News tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. It's Tuesday. I'll probably be back Saturday. All right? Unfortunately, the Bootneck's got to work for a living. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers to Despot of Antrim, and I'll see you all very soon. Toodle pip.